Okay. Okay. Now you can hear me. Thank you. Sorry, guys. I'm not sure where I lost you. Apologize. I think there. Okay. So we've explained what CPQ is, and now I'm going to jump into a little bit more information. So overall, CPQ is a suite of products. It's used for guided selling, quoting, and proposal generation. At the heart of the suite of applications is a rules-based configurator. It can be embedded in and called from multiple applications, including ERP systems, to generate and support entry of orders, quotes, and jobs, as well as bombs and routings. It can also be connected out through Sales Portal, which is primarily a dealer-facing portal designed to allow outside dealers, distributors, and independent sales reps to build their own quotes and turn Sorry, guys, I'm not sure what's happening with our server at the moment, so hopefully you can still hear me and nothing crashes. Okay, so we were talking about Sales Portal and how it's a dealer-facing network. It can be used to turn quotes into orders and then flow into your ERP system. Another part of CPQ is it can also be called from your public website to give potential customers a build your own kind of experience that's more or less used as a lead generator. The setup or style of configurator allows you to make changes in one place, and it will make updates across all of the boards in which you're using configurators. So at the heart of the configurator is where you're really going to maintain everything. Once it's updated here, it's actually going to make those changes across all the platforms in which you're using it, which includes your ERP system. Okay, moving right along. Who uses CPQ? First of all, internal salespeople, outside dealers and reps, as well as order entry clerks and engineers. So these people can make orders, they can review orders. This can also be helpful for any sort of sales manager role as well, before if there's any markups that need to happen or discounts. And then engineers, most importantly, because they can sign off on bills of material without actually creating those from scratch. Why are we using CPQ? So basic reason, and the most important, is it's the single source of truth. All of your information is kept in one place, which means if you are updating pricing, updating models, it's all going to be held within CPQ and then applied to any application that's using it, such as your ERP system. It's going to streamline the workflow. It's going to make your quoting process a lot more efficient, and it's going to improve your business process. And because of those two reasons, you're going to increase the quote volume overall, because once you eliminate errors and inefficiencies through the quoting process, you're actually going to have more time to push out more quotes. So it's also a time saver, and it also reduces RMA and error work. All right. Remember, if you have questions, definitely put those in the chat box, and we will get to those as we see them come in. I'm going to actually start from the back end and give you an idea of how user-friendly our tool is. I know I mentioned that CPQ is a suite, and this is just one part of that. So Design Studio is a subpart of the configurator. This is where you're going to build up all of your logic. It's the place where you're going to manage the rules, the variables, constraints, option lists, pricing, and calculations that are typical of your product. It's also going to allow you to manage the manufacturing rules for creating bombs and routings within your ERP system. So sorry for the pun, but it's definitely designed for people with product and domain knowledge. So you do not need to be a programmer or have an IT background, as this is very much set up like an Excel spreadsheet. So over on the very far left is where you're going to actually drag rules and put those in your rule sets, which are in the middle. So you can tell just by looking at this, it looks like a flow chart. So you can see the orders in which the rules and the questions are being asked here. Over on the right-hand side, it's set up like Excel. You can see the syntax here is an equals, and then you put your rule here. So it's very user-friendly. Again, this is the back end of the system called Design Studio. So once you build out your rule set, it's actually going to look like what I'm going to show you in just a moment in the live demo environment. So I'm going to pause here before we jump over into that environment to see if we have any questions. And while we're doing that, I want to show you guys my contact information in case you don't have that and you want to ask more specific questions or have a more specific conversation about CPQ. Just take a screenshot or jot this down real quick, my contact information, and then I am actually going to jump over into our
Yeah, no questions so far on this end, but please feel free to send them over to me if you have any throughout this demonstration. Thanks, guys.
Looks like I lost connection there for a second, so let me make sure I get this pulled up. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Megan. This is Sales Portal. This is an out-of-the-box look of Sales Portal. This is, again, our dealer-facing network that can be used by outside dealers or sales reps. And each of those dealers or sales reps will actually have their own independent login profile for their particular account. So this can be true for sales managers or finance managers as well. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. And I'm going to jump back a screen. Okay, so this is the basic dashboard. Again, completely customizable to however you want it to look. This is just, again, an out-of-the-box look. And from here, we are actually going to jump over and create a quote. So I mentioned just a second ago that you could have a login for each of your dealers or sales reps, and you can actually define the rules in which what appears on this screen. So if you have several products and there are only and they're only tied to one location, that one location would be displayed here. So you can select the customer as well. Everything here is tied directly to the login in which you're using it. So we're going to just name our quote today and get started. So we're going to configure a specialty vehicle. This box right here, you can actually, if you have thousands of products, which some of our customers do, you can actually just type in this box to make it a lot easier. And once you see the configure button, you are ready to rock. So I just left Sales Portal and now I'm launching the configurator. Okay. We have the ability to walk you through step-by-step or a pre-configured specialty vehicle. And I want to show you the step-by-step version first. So we're going to go ahead and continue here. And as you can see, we're going to just walk through different questions and answers. The first type is the radio button. The second type is a WriteIn option. The third type is a drop-down. All of these features are available for you to use within CPQ. It's completely out of the box here. And okay, so when we're selecting our rear wheel, notice how this pop-up comes up. So if your dealers or distributors are walking through a rule set and you want to make sure this is completely error-proof, we put this pop-up in to show you that, you know, if you're choosing a 450 engine, it's going to require a double rear wheel instead of a single rear wheel. So you can actually have a pop-up message come up, or we can completely eliminate this option altogether depending on which options you select. And also notice how one is not being populated without answering the one before that. And then, as you can tell, every time I populate something, it's going to show up over here on the right-hand side. So this is our summary view. It's basically an overview of the questions that we've asked on the left-hand side. So once we tab through several, it's going to be an easy way to make sure all of the questions that we asked are the ones that we wanted to select. So to that, you can see how the next tab populated at the top. That means we've answered all the questions on the left here. So the asterisk makes it a requirement. So once those are all satisfied, the next tab will populate. And again, we have the option here to show you a more visual approach. So we're going to actually go with school bus yellow because I think that's really fun. And if you have a visual product, you can display that over here. So as we make changes to the different colors, it's going to change it over here on the right-hand side. I know this is more or less, if you have a very visual product, it would be a better fit for that. So it's going to be displayed over on the right-hand side. And again, we can change what's being displayed on the right here. So if we want to look at pricing, there's a pricing tab here too. So if we're trying to be mindful of the customer's price, we can eliminate some of these options that are showing up on the right-hand side too. So if you guys noticed, once I answered this question, the next tab actually populated. So these are all optional right here. They're not a required question that has to be answered. Okay, there are definitely several things that are available to me in this window here. Also, if your product requires a lot more questions, as this one has just a few tabs, and we notice that we actually don't want a V10 engine, we can actually select that over here, and it will actually put us back to that tab. So again, this is just a basic way to check your answers over here on the right. And if you have thousands of questions that you need to ask and you realized you want to change something very simple, like the transmission, it's going to highlight that over here for you no matter where you are in the rule set questions. So we were at the body part. Another unique feature of CPQ, as I mentioned when we were logging in, I logged in as a dealer, and I know that the customer wants a very specific rack that is mounted within their ambulance or fire truck here, and they want to actually supply their own equipment and have us install it. So we're gonna just tell them the dimensions here. So we're gonna do 14 by 10 by 30 inches. And then we are going to hit finish. Once we hit finish, we're actually launched back into Sales Portal, and you can see that that line item populated right here in Sales Portal. Okay, so that is the configurator in a nutshell as far as configuring products. But remember how I said that I logged in as a dealer and our customer wanted to actually they wanted to supply their own equipment and have us install that equipment. So I'm actually going to show you what it would look like as an engineer. So now I'm going to be logging in as an engineer. As you see, I changed the user role right here, and I'm actually going to go back. Now, when I log in as an engineer, you can see I have a highlighted option right here. So you can deny this request or approve it with cost impact or not. So we're going to approve it with no cost impact because we're an engineer and price isn't really important to us, but I'm going to say it's going to cost us about $200 to install that, and then we are going to approve that. So I'm just going to check this box. but usually that's not where it ends. So once engineering approves it, they're gonna close out of their window. Usually a sales manager has to also then approve it. So now I'm going to log in and show you what it could look like as a sales manager. So again, we can go in and see that the engineer approved it for $200, but they didn't mark it up. But as salespeople, we always want to mark everything up. So we're going to approve it with price impact. And I also want to mention too that when you are working within Configurator, you can, this option right here can either flag your business process and can stop it altogether, or you can continue moving this, assuming that these are all going to be approved. It's really dependent on your process overall. So we're going to mark this up to 250, and then we're going to check off on it here. So this is one way which you can make your business process more efficient. Again, that is going to be displayed right here as a line item. A couple more things that I want to touch on. I want to keep this as basic as possible because this is just an introduction to CPQ, but we have the ability to change the versioning of our quotes here. So quote versioning, this little drop down right here, is actually going to give each version of the quote its own entity. And basically, it's going to be identified by the number at the end of the quote ID. So when a version of a quote is converted to an order, any other versions of that quote will be completely inactive. So if we want to make another version of this quote, we can go in and change options here. And anything in version 2, so if we want to change the interior, instead of bucket seats vinyl, we want to change it to cloth, and that's the only change we make, it's going to update that right here. But again, when you have several different versions floating around, only the order that gets converted is going to be the one that gets converted. There's not going to be other versions floating around. They're going to actually become inactive. Another part of the configurator within this piece right here is named configuration. So this is actually going to provide the ability to save individual line configurations for fully or even partially configured items, and it can be created for any user, company, or location. So you can actually, if there's a specific part number tied to one of your customers has a specific part number that they always have to use, you can actually name that configuration here. They always order this model of ambulance or this model of door or what have you. You can tie their part number here to that configuration here, and you can name that here, and you have the ability up at the top here to call it by user, company, or location. Okay, the next piece right here is a WriteIn option. So this button will open up a dialog, and that will enable you to add unique items to quotes that aren't available as non-configured items. So one thing that we always like to say is if you're a door manufacturer and your customer is asking for labor, and that's not necessarily something that your company is going to do, you can write labor in as a WriteIn option here and kind of put the pricing with that as a WriteIn option. Next, I would like to talk about the product catalog. So the product catalog is basically your place where your SKUs are listed. So these are non-configured products, usually spare parts or individual parts that you can actually add. So this has been added to our quote, and we can add those, and then they will show up as line items on our quote. Again, those are non-configured products, so they're basically just going to be calling out different SKUs for your product here. Also, I did want to mention too, everything saves real time. So there's no save button, which is kind of confusing if you're used to saving every minute or so. There's no save button here. So everything is saved real time. Again, so that's basically what I wanted to touch on today. I want to get to questions to see if there are specific parts or pieces that you want to see within CPQ. You can place orders in the ERP system. You can adjust line items here. But I saw some questions pop up, so I wanted to address those.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions from Durson here. So the first one being is, can this be customer facing to take orders directly and generate a job, for example, through a web or another application, or is it limited to a lead generator in a customer facing setting?
Okay. Can you ask the last part of that again, Megan?
Yeah, so is it limited to a lead generator in a customer facing setting?
Okay, so Sales Portal is actually used for dealers and distributors. Durson, if you're talking more like you want this to be something customer facing, we do have an option for that. It's not going to be Sales Portal. It's actually called Interest Capture. And we can show you that. I know I have your contact information. We have a separate option for customer facing. It looks a lot different and the feels a little bit different too. The Sales Portal is primarily used for dealers and sales reps though. Did I answer that, or was there another piece of that?
And then he was just wondering what would be involved in doing all of that. So I think that's answered perfectly.
Okay, yeah, so that's going to be interest capture. And Durson, I can send you an email after this and get you more information on interest capture, which is the customer facing side of things.
Okay. Then I do have another question here from Durson, and maybe even our partner Jeremy Fenley would be great to answer this, because he actually developed the software from TDCI by design. So, but I'll ask you the question, and then we can also see if Jeremy can answer from Durson. So how has this evolved from TDCI by design 7.5 to Infor CPQ? Durson says that he's used an older version and he's curious about what new features exist and how the product has evolved. Do you have anything to add to that, Tiffany?
I think Jeremy should answer. He has firsthand experience with TDCI, but I do know that it was rebranded to Infor CPQ from by design, yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question for Jeremy, considering he's worked there. And then,
hey guys,
so
you want to hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear
you.
Okay, yeah, I'll just add in kind of at a high level my 2 cents, and then we can certainly schedule time to run through 8.1 in more detail. But from 7.5 to 8.1, there's been a couple of major version updates. So from 7.5, it went to version 8.0, and then eventually to version 8.1, which is the most current version of the on-premise configurator right now. So from stuff that you wouldn't necessarily see, there's been a lot of performance improvements with the system. So I know that depending on how big your rule set is and how much data you have in option list and matrices, there's been a lot of performance improvements on that just from the configurator standpoint. And then one of the big differences that Infor has done compared to TDCI has been that TDCI did more of point releases where there was updates, but those updates were more along the lines of bug fixes, as opposed to Infor's approach, where it's been, there really hasn't been a point release in some time now, but there's been a lot of new functionality that was introduced via these update processes. So one of those, for example, would be they released what was called the configurable UI. And so that configurable UI introduced a new set of rules into Design Studio, and those rules then allow you to build logic the same way that you build rules now, but all of that rules logic is around the presentation. So it gives you the option of, if I want, instead of the standard 50-50 split with configurator, I want the image to take the top half of the screen and I want all my questions at the bottom, for example, or I want multiple rows showing within the question and answer piece, I can do that as well. So that's just one example of some of the improvements. I know that there's been additional rules introduced as far as the looking up multiple rows within one matrix, and some other things. So there is a KB article out there that Infor tracks, at least for 8.1, all the new functionality that has been introduced with updates. So we can send that over to you as well. And then if you want to schedule time to look at it more in depth, we can certainly do that as well.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. Perfect. So I have one last question here, and if anybody has any other ones, please feel free to send them in. But here's our last one. Are the review options something that is available exclusively through the sales portal, or is that functionality tied to the CPQ system?
I'm not sure who asked that question, but are you talking about the proofing report?
Let me see here. Well, Durson asked it. If he wants to, he can unmute himself or go ahead.
Okay, that's fine. I was typing out a response, so I'm not sure actually where it was. I just saw some nifty little review options for engineering or for sales to approve with some markup or not. I was just kind of curious if that's just through the sales portal, if that's something that is tied to the CPQ system in general.
So, okay, so are you talking about this screen right here?
Yes.
Yeah, so these rules are written within Design Studio and launched out of the configurator itself. So we can, this is an option, so this is completely customizable. You don't have to have it, but sometimes it's required for business processes to have the engineer approval and the markups in here. So we can, this is a configurator portion of that. Jeremy, did you have something else you wanted to add to that?
No, I mean, I think you explained it well. It's just leveraging profiles and then configurator rules. So that, yeah, that's nothing custom necessarily that we're doing. That's all standard functionality within configurator. You can leverage that though, where based on the profile that's coming into the configurator, then you have the ability to show or hide questions. And so you can use it as a workflow process where your customer service rep creates it the first time, and then you have other approvals that need to happen. And when those other personas come into the configurator, then you can use that to say, okay, well, now these next set of questions are required, and use that to drive the approval process.
So to answer that a little bit further, Durson, if you are a sales manager that's logging into Sales Portal, you're going to see that you have something that you have to approve, and it's going to actually take you to the configurator where this note is located.
Okay, yeah, I actually, is that a good answer? Are we finished with that question?
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Okay, awesome. And then I actually see one more here that I want to make sure I get to before we end up signing off. But is there a way to deal with payment directly, or is that something that we would have to add additional development for?
This is a question about taking payment through Sales Portal, so credit card payments?
I believe so. This question is from Durson again, so if he would like to elaborate, he can.
I think it was answered by the interest capture.
Oh. Okay. Awesome. Well, that's all I have for questions then. And if there's nothing more, I don't see any more coming through the chat, but thank you all for joining us today. Tiffany or Jeremy, do you guys have anything else to add? No, I'll assume that's a no.
If you guys are looking for more of a technical side of things, we're going to be hosting another webinar in November to kind of take a little bit deeper dive into CPQ. And I'm not sure if my audio was working at the beginning when I mentioned that we're going to be at Infor. Jeremy's going to be putting on a CPQ session there. That's going to be September 24th, which is a Tuesday in New Orleans. We're going to be taking a little deeper dive into CPQ there as well. So if you're going to be attending and you want more technical questions to have answered, that's going to be the place. Or then again, we will be hosting another webinar in November to take a little bit more deeper dive into CPQ as well.
Yeah, perfect. And then I was going to add too, if you do have any questions that come up later on, feel free to email me. You guys, everybody that's attending should have my email address, or you can also contact Tiffany at tiffany@renaissancetech.com for any other questions that you may have about the CPQ solution. But if there are no more, I think we're good to go. Thank you guys for attending again.